Hi, let's go ahead and get started with the first we got two presentations I want to go through this week. I kind of broke out technology project management into two main areas that I want to talk about. Um, this one's just sort of an intro. We'll get into the overall qualities of technology project management, and then the next presentation we're talking a little bit more specifically about the triple constraint and how you really need to actively manage that throughout the project. But this one's just talking about project in general. As I mentioned in the intro this week, IT has a terrible track record of execution on projects. A third of the projects are canceled for completion, half of them are considered challenged, about six of them actually succeed with everything they planned out to do. Reason for that, technology is inherently risky. We are, as engineers, inherently overconfident. We see a vision of how things are going to be and we think we're going to get there. And we don't necessarily think of all the unknowns that are going to pop up throughout and all the unknown unknowns that are going to be hurdles for us as we go forward into the project. And a lot of that's because you're implementing technology in a new place. You don't even know all the problems that you're going to have. It's very different from building a bridge or building a building. People have been doing that for thousands of years. They kind of know what can happen. This is a unique area, so we get stuck. They need then to do project management. So project management's really been around since as a uh, uh, process or as an institution, really since the Industrial Revolution. But there are formal ways to do it, and in IT, there's a formal way as well, and that's what we need to sort of get around and manage too. It gives you better control of all your resources, improves your customer relationships as you move forward. It makes sure that you're doing all the things that you see listed here to enable yourself to get sort of shorter development times, keep the cost down as much as possible, and get the best quality you can, and inevitable reliability within the product that you're delivering. And then make sure you got better internal coordination, and at the end of the day, better morale and less stress for the people that are actually working on this thing, and confidence then that as you go throughout the job, doing more and more projects, that you'll be able to do it. So we talk a little about the project. I won't go over this definition, but basically any temporary endeavor undertaken to create a new unique product or service. So when you start to go implement something, that's a project. Let's go ahead and do some project management on this. And go through that. Projects by definition involve some uncertainty. So I put that in the bottom. And that's going to be managed using what we call the triple constraint. These are the three areas of the project that really, when one of them changes, you've got to adjust the other two, or one of the other two. A successful project means you're going to meet all three goals: scope, time, and cost, to satisfy the project sponsor. So scope, meaning everything that needs to get done; time, meaning when does it actually have to get done by; and then cost, how much resources do we have to actually put in this thing. If you increase one of them, then you're going to, by definition, be doing something with the others to adjust for that. So managing this triple constraint is going to be critical to moving projects forward. Some people will include quality as a fourth constraint. I don't like to, because I like three, but also quality really is just inherent in the scope that you're managing. We talk through a project management technique that basically says there's 10 areas that you need to be managing at any given point in time in order to have success. You got to be managing your scope, your quality, your cost management, and your time management. Remember that triple constraints on the top of this bar here. On the bottom, you're also in the process of doing this and doing it well. You got to be able to manage suppliers. You got to be able to manage the people that are involved. Manage the risks of the overall project, which is getting more and more important, and we'll see that as we go into Agile with technology development. What's becoming apparent is if you can focus on your risks and manage that most effectively, the rest of it kind of comes into line and falls into line. Managing communication and managing the stakeholders. If you can integrate all of those management techniques within a single management process, right, on how you're managing this project, you'll get to success. How do we make sure we get to success? There are a number of key factors that really drive it. Executive support, number one. Do you have that? Because you will inevitably have problems. Do you have executive support that's going to back you up as you move forward and struggle? Do you have user involvement? So at the end of the day, do you have users making sure that when you deliver this thing, it's exactly what they want, or they're at least expecting what they get? Do you have an experienced project manager on this, someone who knows how to do this and has done in the past? Clearly defined project objectives. Again, back to scope. A small scope, as small as you can. shorter schedules, multiple milestones, lots of things that you know can keep you on track or let you know early on if you're not on track. That process that we talked about in a standard infrastructure. If you're going in and building on top of something that you know isn't going to cause you problems, but it's a standard infrastructure, that's key. And then low risk. Keep it simple, keep it smart. The simpler, the low scope, the lowest risk possible, the better off you're going to be. The executive support is going to be key for getting those secure resources, for securing resources, protecting those resources once you get them, and getting you access to other company resources. What we have to make sure is that when we go into this project, that executive support is going to be able to buttress the fact that what may be obvious to us in terms of, look, this is a necessary capability. We need to have this. Everyone knows we need to have this. You'll be surprised how easy it is for things to get derailed. If you don't have that executive support, it can easily get derailed, and then you'll wind up trying to justify your project continuously. User involvement. Customer demand, make sure that's there. Make sure you've got support there. They can validate success criteria, make sure that the project is becoming what it actually needs to do. These are key to help you overcome, number one, different culture, concerns about scope creep, right? If it's growing in scope, the users can help you determine which of the things not to keep out. And then if you need a time commitment to work with those SMEs, that's where you need to be able to work with the user and have that relationship built up with the users. The experienced project manager is key for success. And that's just here. 97% of successful projects have had an experienced project manager running it, because someone who knows how to manage all those different domains is going to be key, because you will have problems along the way. And that experience, you don't want them to gain their experience necessarily on your project. Sometimes you have to, you got to get someone new, but make sure they got a good mentor, make sure they got a good backstop and processes that they can follow. Not all managers necessarily are good IT managers, and that's something to keep in mind. Just because someone was good at doing a fairly straightforward project doesn't mean they can handle all the risk and challenges that are going to come up with an IT project. A lot of words in these charts, so it's available for you to actually download and do whatever, but I just want to go through and hit some of the highlights here. These clearly defined project objectives are going to be key because they give a rallying point for everyone who's working on the project to be able to know, look, this is what we need to do, and if you're not getting there, no matter what tasks you're doing, if at the end of the day you're not getting to these key rallying points, then everyone's going to look around and say, wait, we're not doing this right. You got a project has to meet defined up front so you know what you're shooting for. So you got to meet cost, time, and scope goals, and it's got to satisfy the customer or sponsor. The result of the project has got to be that met its main objective, either saving a certain amount of money or making sponsors happy or tying some ROI. These are going to be key in order to make sure that the project is successful going forward. It sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised. A lot of projects, they start out with like this phase 4 implementation. No one knows what it's actually going to do at the end. And by the time it gets along the way, it fails. So make sure you have clear project objectives. Make sure your scope is as small as possible and it's clearly defined. All right. The smaller scope has fewer possibilities for risk. Smaller scope helps keep your objectives clear. Small scope is less likely to creep, right? To grow. And then by definition, less likely to go over time and over budget. So in order to keep that, you got to overcome the desire to please. Everyone's going to come along and say, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had this other thing too? Hey, while you're in there, why don't you change this thing? Someone else come on, and then your own folks will come up and say, you know what, this is what the scope says, but if we do this differently, it'll have all these great benefits. Just keep your scope down as small as possible. Shorter schedules and multiple milestones. We talk about this. This is how you can fail on a small budget if you don't do something like this. Keep it simple so everyone can see the end. Keep it simple so that everyone can see the next milestone. So you're not necessarily always working towards the end project. You are, but you really kind of can focus folks on, look, we have a milestone due in 2 weeks. Everyone all in right there. Remember, the last day of the project has as many hours in it as the first day of the project. So if you can get people animated and motivated and working that overtime or putting in all that effort to get to that first milestone 2 weeks in, and you just meet all your milestones as you go, when you get to the end of the project, you don't have this huge rush or this this thing about, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to delay 6 months or anything like that, because you've worked hard all the way to make sure you meet each milestone. That's how you keep on track and how you keep success. Clearly defined project management process. Make sure you have a process in place. Manage the project. Don't let it manage you. If it gets out in front of you and you can't manage all the different things that are happening, then you don't have a good enough process in there. This helps you keep all the right activities in motion at the same time. Remember, there are 10 activities that we said have to keep going. Your process should flow you through that. Every week, you're working everything that you need to make sure all of those things are working out. Standard infrastructure. This one is key because what you want to do is make sure that as much as possible you're reducing the risk of the project. And if you can bring in infrastructure pieces from throughout industry that are going to be beneficial and be part of this, that have already been explored, have already been baked in, and they're successful, you're just going to have a lot more success, right? It's going to make fewer problems, fewer integration issues, fewer risks moving forward that you have to take on for your project. Also keep in mind, projects are not run in isolation, so there's going to be multiple initiatives occurring simultaneously while you're working on your project. Other outside events are occurring, and you can't put your blinders on necessarily and just go forward without understanding that. You need to operate within the cultural and organizational framework of the entire enterprise, and that means working together with other projects, and as things evolve, including potentially the infrastructure that you're writing on, you have to be able to adjust to that. So keep your enterprise systems thinking going. Make sure you don't get to the end of this project and be something that actually can't implement. Finally, manage your stakeholders. There's a lot of people who have a vested interest in the project, otherwise impacted by its success or its failure. These include the sponsor, the project manager, the project team, obviously the folks that are working on it, the support staff, your customers, users, suppliers that are involved, even people that are not necessarily interested in your project or aren't supporters of your project. And so, they may want to take your resources and use it elsewhere. They are stakeholders as well in your success or your failure, and you've got to manage them on an ongoing basis, because any challenges and issues that you have along the way, you're going to have to be interacting with stakeholders in one way or another and getting them on board with your project. Two main methodologies that we talk about: waterfall approach, which is successfully completing each stage and moving to the next. Think of determining your requirements stage, then going into the design phase, then going into a coding phase, then going into a testing phase, or an integration phase, and a testing phase, and an integration testing phase, then going to delivery and quality assurance, all those kinds of things. It kind of makes sense. It's how we handle a lot of small tasks. The problem with that is that what happens in IT projects is we wind up traveling work. We put milestone in, says requirements have to get done, then we get there, we're almost there, we don't have all the requirements, but it's good enough for everyone to look at and say, yeah, so not everything quite comes in, and then those little things that are hanging on just kind of hang on for a little bit longer, and then we start to see ripples and everything getting stuck. Agile methodologies, DevSecOps, these kinds of things, DevOps, it's continual development, continual feedback, continual testing. It allows you to build maturity as you go, and it really allows you to manage the scope very well as you move through the project. It also reduces a lot of the delays associated with traveled work or with waiting on integrations from other aspects. If you do this well, it can be a very effective methodology to getting the most out of your developers and putting as little waste as possible into the system. There is a risk, if you don't manage it well, of the inmates running the asylum and your developers coming up with their stories and deciding that they're going to decide what the requirements are for the project. But that's the thing you got to manage. So in this assignment this week, we're going to be developing a digital storefront. You need to interview users, buy the hardware, build and test the software, deploy it. Basically, what I want you to do is lay out a schedule through Waterfall, and I want you to do the same kind of project plan. Describe how you would change it if you're using Agile methodology. So the assignment will have more information in it, but I wanted to introduce this in this presentation. So this is what we're going to be doing this week going forward. I'm going to come back with you in a few minutes and talk about the triple constraint as well.